Welcome to my Introduction to Networking course, also known as ITN. This is the version 7 material preparing learners for the Cisco CCNA 200-301. Cisco curriculum, everything is owned and copyrighted by them. First module is Networking Today, and it is basically what networking today looks like. And we break that down into things like affecting our lives, components, representation and topologies, types, connections, reliability networks, trends in networking, security, and we're going to end with employment opportunities. So let's go ahead and jump right in. How do networks affect our lives? Well, we know that we have to rely on things like air and water and food and shelter to survive. Well, communication is one of those things that we become reliant on. We need to be able to communicate with other people. So in today's world, through the use of a digital network, we can connect and communicate with people globally like never before. So again, how we use technology to make the world a better place could be a combination, I'm not playing the video, could be a combination of how we use instant messengers, how we use email, how we use forums to actually obtain information and to share information. If you look at social media platforms, we can now share photos and information globally within seconds. Or short videos using YouTube or TikTok or Tumblr or any of the other plethora of social media sites. The nice thing is there are no real boundaries when it comes to communication because we are now a global community. Technology is one aspect of our communication. The human network, that human connection, is still equally important as it allows communication between two individuals, and that type of communication is not going away. Alright, so let's go ahead and get into network components. So what are the things that make up a network? So we have to have hosts. We have to have something that will host something. And the typical host roles are going to be a device that will host a resource. So every computer on a network is called a host or an end device. Again, they have some type of resource that's available on the network. Servers are computers that provide additional services and typically have different type of hardware. Servers can be like an email server, a web server, a file server, and so forth. So that will serve a resource. The person requesting the resource are called clients. Clients are the computer that, again, send the requests to retrieve information, such as a website or a web page or an email from an email server, and so forth. A host can be both server and client depending on contexts. Typically in this environment, this would be called a client-server type setup. And the servers are typically dedicated machines where the clients are not typically serving a lot of resources. Like you'd have a centralized server hosting all files, or you'd have a centralized server hosting all email. Not have 20 computers all hosting email so that when an email is received, it goes to all 20 of them and they all have to process it. So keep in mind, in this type of setup, client server, where the servers are dedicated resources. Alright, in contrast, we have what's known as a peer-to-peer network. And that's where every host is both server and client, and they all share local resources. Advantages to peer-to-peer is that it's easier to set up, way less complex, normally no software needed, and it's very simple. Disadvantage, not really secure, not really scalable, and there is no centralization for administration. So that means if you want to share things between devices, each device, each host would have to have shared permissions set up on each one. So we keep saying hosts or end devices. Well, what exactly are the devices in between a network that connects multiple end devices? So again, the formal definition of end device or host is where a message originates from or where it's received. Data originating with an end device will flow through the network and arrive at a separate end device. Here we have an inner network, which is an actual network that basically will act as a network of networks, and it will take something from a local network, a LAN, a local area network, and it will allow for communication to a separate LAN regardless of geographical location. So if you think of a small community, like a cul-de-sac, each home would be its own LAN, and each of those residents would connect their LAN to their ISP. Here we have Cox or CenturyLink, so each home would connect to their ISP. Their ISP would be the internet network. That would be the one that actually allows for communication between the different households. So this internet network, what is this comprised of? It's normally comprised of what we call the intermediary networking devices. These are going to be things that interconnect end devices, switches, wireless connections like a wireless access point, routers, firewalls, things like that. They are to help manage the flow of data through the network. Part of that management also entails things like generating and retransmitting data signals or electrical signals when necessary, maintaining information about pathways or how to deliver something from device A and device B, and lastly, notifying other devices if there are errors or issues, because a retransmission of data may be required. The most common one that we're going to be looking at are routers and switches, and the cabling that connects everything. So when we talk cabling, we talk three main types of physical media. We talk metal wire, typically some type of copper. We talk fiber optic, which is a glass or plastic connection, or we talk wireless. I understand wireless is not a physical medium that you cannot touch, but I get that, but I mean that falls within our mediums. The medium allows for communication between one device and another. So how does everything get laid out? That is the representation and the topology. That's how we define how things are structured. End devices are going to be computer, laptops, printers, phones, things of that nature. Intermediary devices will be, again, switches, routers, wireless devices. Media will be, again, wireless, copper, or fiber optic. End devices will have what's called a NIC, Network Interface Card. It is the card that allows for interfacing with the network. A wireless network will have a wireless NIC. It is the interface card that allows for wireless communication. So you need to understand what NICs are, what interfaces are, and physical connections. What type of port is it? Can you plug something into it? Is it a USB port? Is it an Ethernet port? Often the terms port and interface are interchangeable, but they're not always the same. So do be careful with that. Most of our course, we're going to be talking about ports being physical, and we're going to be talking about actual configuring the logical interface. So let's move on to how we represent a network. Main two ways, physical or logical. The physical topology will illustrate the physical location and the intermediary devices and the cabling, where the logical will illustrate devices, the ports, the addressing, the more logical structure of the network. Both are equally important and both are typically done. When I do network design, I have both included in my network documentation. So what are some common types of networks? And that is it for this lecture. If you have any questions or concerns, please reach out. Thank you.